Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to our channel, True Courtroom Stories, episode 88. Today, we're diving into a case that feels like it's straight out of a movie, but it's true story from nearly 1,000 years ago. It's an incredible account of judicial integrity, all based on the amazing research of Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir. We're talking about a judge who was faced with a bribe so massive it could change his life forever. But it's his response. Wow. His response set a standard for justice that we're still talking about today. So let's get right into it. All right, let me paint a picture for you. We're in the Seljuk-Persian Empire. This is a vast, powerful kingdom. And in this kingdom, one of the most powerful people, second only to the Sultan himself, is the vizier. Think of him as the chief minister, the right-hand man. Now, this vizier has a problem. He's involved in a property dispute, and he needs it to go his way. So he goes to the judge, but he doesn't come with threats. No, he comes with something far more seductive, a bribe. And we're not talking about a bag of gold. He offers the judge a magnificent, luxurious mansion. This is a life-changing offer, designed to buy not just a ruling, but a man's soul. The stakes could not be higher. And this is what the judge said in response. Words that have just echoed through the centuries. A judge who takes gifts becomes a slave. Just stop and think about that for a second. The brutal honesty of that statement. He's not just saying, oh, bribery is wrong. He's saying it fundamentally changes who you are. The moment a judge takes a gift, he's no longer an arbiter of the law. He's a servant to the person who gave it. He's a slave. And then he drops the hammer with that final line. Justice is not sold. It's not a product. It's not a service you can buy. It's a sacred principle. And that one idea is the absolute heart of this entire story. Okay, so a powerful quote is one thing. But this judge, he was just getting started. He didn't just stop with some well-chosen words. What he did next turned his refusal into an act of outright defiance. This wasn't just about one case anymore. This was about setting a precedent that would last for generations. Let's break down exactly how he didn't just turn down the bribe, but went on the offensive against the very idea of corruption itself. And this right here is the absolute key to the whole thing. The safe play, the easy way out, would have been to just quietly say, no thank you, and hope this incredibly powerful vizier would just go away. You know, don't make waves. But that's not what happened. Not even close. Because this judge understood something crucial. Corruption isn't just a passive offer you can ignore. It's an active poison seeping into the justice system. And the only way to deal with poison is with an active antidote. He knew he didn't just have to avoid corruption. He had to attack it head-on. What he did next was nothing short of a masterclass in what we can call active integrity. See, it wasn't enough for him to be personally clean, to be incorruptible in his own heart. He showed that a truly just official has a duty to expose and dismantle corruption wherever they find it. It's not about protecting yourself, it's about protecting the entire system. And he came up with a brilliant, systematic plan to hold power accountable. Look at this strategy. It was a methodical, 4-step takedown. First, the forceful rejection we already talked about. No ambiguity, just a hard no. Step 2, he goes straight to the very top. He writes a detailed, formal report and sends it directly to the Sultan. This ensures it can't get buried or swept under the rug by some lower-level official. But then, look at step 3. This is where it gets incredibly bold. He doesn't just report the vizier's crime, he demands his removal from office. The sheer audacity. And finally, step 4. He asks for a public inquiry. He wants everything out in the open, total transparency, so everyone can see that justice is being done. This wasn't a refusal, this was a full-blown counterattack on corruption. So, the big question is, did this incredibly risky plan actually work? You bet it did. The Sultan received the report, and the judge's courage was met with immediate action. An investigation was launched, the vizier's guilt was quickly confirmed, and the consequences were severe. He was dismissed from his powerful post. But here's the critical part. He was also banned from ever holding public office again. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist. This was a permanent removal of a corrupting influence from the heart of the government. All because one judge refused to become a slave. What an amazing story of one person's courage, right? But it's so much more than just a cool historical anecdote. There's a powerful, universal principle at play here. So let's zoom out a bit and distill the timeless lesson from this single event. Because its implications, well, they reach far, far beyond this one moment in history. So let's ask the question directly. Let's really think about this. What is this ancient story really telling us about the true role of a judge, or honestly, about anyone in a position of public trust? Because this isn't just a simple morality tale about not taking bribes. It's actually a blueprint for how to build strong, resilient, and trustworthy institutions. And this brings us to the core idea, a principle we can call active judicial integrity. The difference is everything. Passive integrity is just not being corrupt yourself. It's the bare minimum. Active integrity, though, demands so much more. It's the idea that a judge has a responsibility to fight corruption wherever it appears. And notice that last part. They must be seen to be fighting it. It's about building public trust. It's the difference between seeing a fire and just walking away versus grabbing an extinguisher and yelling for everyone to get out. This judge sounded the alarm loud and clear. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. That's a fantastic story, but it was 1,000 years ago. The world is a totally different place now. But is it, really? This ancient standard, this idea of active integrity, is being tested right now, every single day, in the most complex and high-stakes legal battles of our modern world. Let's bridge that gap. The context changes, for sure, but the fundamental challenge is exactly the same. Back then, it was a very direct, obvious bribe, a mansion. Today, the pressures are usually way more subtle. It might be political pressure from the government. It might be a relentless media campaign designed to sway public opinion. Or it could be a tangled web of complex financial interests. But all these things test the very same principle. Does the person in charge just passively avoid the pressure, or do they actively fight back to make sure justice stays impartial? Let's look at a couple of modern examples where this exact principle was on full display. Take the Clearstream scandal in France. This was an incredibly messy affair, involving allegations of financial crimes and, crucially, forged documents designed to ruin the careers of top politicians. The investigating judges here couldn't just sit back and be neutral referees. Their integrity was tested by a complex campaign of misinformation. They had to become detectives to actively push back against immense political pressure and untangle a web of lies. Their job was to fight and attempt to use the legal system itself as a political weapon. Or think about the high-profile NAB cases in Pakistan, which investigate corruption. These aren't just legal proceedings, they're national events with everyone watching. The judges in these cases are under an intense microscope from politicians, the media, and the public. Active integrity here means demonstrating, beyond any doubt, that the court is impartial. It's about building a fortress of law that stands strong against the storms of public opinion and political maneuvering, proving the system can hold anyone accountable. In both these modern cases, the courts were called on not just to be clean, but to be a cleansing force. So, we've traveled from the 11th century Seljuk Empire all the way to modern-day courtrooms in Europe and Asia. Let's bring it all together. What is the common thread? Why does this 1,000-year-old story of a brave judge still hit so hard today? Why does it feel, in many ways, more relevant than ever? Here's the bottom line. The story of that judge and that vizier isn't just a dusty piece of history. It's a benchmark. It is a gold standard for justice. It gives us a clear, powerful, and demanding measuring stick that we can hold up to our own judicial systems, our own leaders, and ask, are they meeting this standard? It teaches us that real justice isn't just about handing down verdicts. It's about actively and courageously defending the entire system from those who would try to bend it for their own gain. And that's the question I want to leave you with. The vizier's bribe was obvious. It was a mansion, you could see it, touch it. But today's influences are so often invisible. They're hidden in complex financial networks, whispered in quiet phone calls, or veiled in subtle political threats. So in our modern world of hidden influence, what does it really take to uphold that standard of active, defiant integrity that was set so clearly, so powerfully all those centuries ago? What does it take to be that kind of judge? All right, so first things first, let's really frame this problem. We usually think of threats to a country in terms of armies or borders or big geopolitical conflicts. But the research we're looking at today shines a light on something way more sneaky, a danger that doesn't storm the gates, but quietly rots the whole structure from the inside out. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. Corruption erodes the republic from within. This isn't just about some money going missing. Not at all. It's about the trust between people and their government dissolving. It's about institutions starting to crumble. It's the slow poisoning of the basic idea that a state is there to serve its citizens. So the big question is, when that starts to happen, who's there to stop it? And that question brings us right to the heart of our explainer today, this idea of the judiciary as the guardians of the republic. When you're facing that kind of internal decay, the courts can actually step up and become this incredible bulwark, a last line of defense dedicated to preserving the nation's integrity, not just interpreting dusty old laws. But get this isn't some radical new idea. The principle that nobody, and I mean nobody, is above the law has some seriously deep roots in history. The research points out this amazing parallel all the way back to the Seljuk era, where they also believed that going after powerful officials for corruption was absolutely essential to protect the state itself. So what we're witnessing with Pakistan's Supreme Court is like they're dusting off this ancient, timeless playbook and applying it to a very modern crisis. Okay, so that's the big idea, the philosophy, but it's not just talk. The court has put this principle into practice in some very real, very high-stakes situations. So let's take a look at the landmark cases that really show these guardians in action. Things really kicked into high gear with the explosive Panama case in 2017. I mean, this was a political earthquake. It sent shockwaves through the entire system because it showed on a massive scale that even the highest offices in the land were not untouchable. It was a loud and clear signal that the old rules just didn't apply anymore. And it didn't stop there. After that, we saw a series of important references coming from the National Accountability Bureau, which is also known as NAB. Now, for anyone who's not familiar, NAB is pretty much the country's main anti-corruption agency. So these cases weren't just a single event. They were a pattern. They reinforced the court's assertive new stance, creating this consistent drumbeat of judicial oversight. And then came the sugar and wheat inquiry cases, which took things to a whole new level. Why? Because here, the court was tackling corruption that directly hit the nation's most essential resources. We're talking about food, the basics that affect every single citizen. This showed a really powerful commitment not just to protecting abstract ideas, but to guarding the actual, tangible well-being of the public. You put these cases together, and you can't miss the picture it paints: a court on a mission. So you have to ask, what's driving all these huge decisions? Is the court just making it up as it goes along? No, not at all. There's a really clear and solid legal philosophy behind it all, and we can understand it by breaking it down into 3 fundamental pillars of justice. It all flows together so logically. First, you have pillar number 1. Public office is a public trust. It's a simple but profound idea. It means that power isn't a personal perk. It's a sacred duty that you owe to the people. You're just holding it in trust for them. Now, if you accept that, pillar number 2 follows naturally. Acquiring illicit wealth breaches constitutional morality. It's more than just a crime. It violates the very ethical soul of the state. And that leads us straight to the 3rd and final pillar, the court's solemn duty to protect national resources. It means a judiciary can't be a passive observer. It has to be an active guardian. Okay, let's zoom out for a second. We've seen the cases, we've looked at the legal thinking behind them, but what's the big picture? Why does any of this really matter? Not just for Pakistan, but for any republic, really. Well, it all comes down to the role of a truly independent judiciary. And here's the key takeaway, the thing to really remember. When other institutions might weaken or fail, an independent and courageous judiciary often becomes the last line of defense. It's not just about punishing wrongdoers. It's about something much bigger, safeguarding a nation's wealth, securing its future, and protecting the very moral foundation upon which the country was built. And that leaves us with one final, pretty powerful question to think about. In our modern era, where trust in public institutions seems to be wearing thin all over the world, is it possible that the gavel, that simple symbol of impartial justice, is actually the most powerful shield a republic has to defend itself from the threats that come from within? Thanks for joining this. Here it is, the central idea, laid out as plainly and powerfully as it gets. Just take a second and let that sink in. Corruption is treason. This isn't just about a backroom deal or a padded invoice. The argument we're exploring today says this is on the same level as betraying your country. Now, that is a bold, bold claim. So our job right now is to unpack what that really means. And it's so important to know where this idea comes from. This entire way of thinking, this whole argument, is the work of Mr. Zahir Ahmed Mir. So as we walk through this, we're really exploring his perspective, piece by piece, to get inside his argument and understand why he frames this issue in such a serious way. Okay, so let's dig into this comparison, because this is the absolute key to the whole thing. On the left, you've got what we all picture when we hear the word treason, right? It's spies selling secrets, helping out some foreign enemy. It's the stuff of movies. But now look at the right. Mr. Mir's argument basically flips the camera around. It says the real treason isn't an attack from the outside, but a betrayal from within. We're not talking about an enemy army at the gates. We're talking about the system rotting from the inside out by its own hand. So how exactly is corruption a treason against the Constitution? Well, Think about it. What is a constitution? It's more than just a document. It's the ultimate rule book. It's the promise that there's a level playing field, that the laws apply to everyone. But corruption? Corruption just rips that rule book to shreds. Every single time a bribe is paid or a contract goes to a buddy instead of the best person for the job, it's a tiny act that screams, the rules don't apply here. It's a direct assault on the very idea of fairness, and it undermines the laws that are supposed to hold a country together. But the argument doesn't just stop with the law books and legal principles. Nope. If attacking the Constitution is betraying the system, the next logical step is to see how it's a direct betrayal of the people, of you, the citizens that system is supposed to protect. And this is where it gets really personal. And I think this slide breaks it down so perfectly. It's like a three-stage rocket of betrayal. First, you've got the betrayal of public trust. We give power to officials expecting them to use it for the common good. Corruption is the ultimate spit in the face of that trust. Second, it betrays our shared resources. That money in the government's bank account, it's not magic, it's our tax dollars, our money, meant for roads and schools and healthcare. Corruption just vacuums that right out. And finally, and this is the most heartbreaking part, it betrays our collective future. It steals opportunities from our kids and their kids, leaving behind a country that's weaker, poorer, and just more broken. This quote really gets to the moral of the story, doesn't it? It shifts our focus from what corruption is to why it's so incredibly dangerous. It suggests that the biggest threat to a country, the thing that can truly bring it to its knees, isn't some foreign army. It's an inside job. It's the internal collapse of honesty. And this comparison just nails the difference. An external threat, an enemy army on the horizon, that's obvious. You can see it coming. And weirdly, it can actually bring a country together, uniting everyone against a common enemy. But this internal threat, the loss of honesty, that's like a cancer. It's quiet, it's invisible for a long time, it just silently eats away at the trust and the institutions that form a nation's foundation until the whole thing is just too weak to stand. You can build the highest walls in the world, but they're useless if the ground they're built on is turning to sand. So the bottom line of Mr. Mear's argument is this. A nation's real strength isn't just in its military might or its economic numbers. Its ultimate security, its most critical vulnerability, is found in the character of its leaders and its people. In other words, you can't separate national security from national integrity. They're the same thing. And that all leads to this final, really powerful idea that just crystallizes the whole argument. We tend to think of honesty as a virtue, a nice personality trait. But this perspective says, nope, you're thinking about it all wrong. Honesty isn't optional. It's not a nice to have. It is the literal foundation, the bedrock that the entire state is built on. And so we end here with this question. After walking through Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mear's argument that corruption is treason, that it's a disease that rots a country from the inside out, we're left to think about the real-world consequences. If honesty really is the bedrock, what happens when that foundation starts to crack? What does that look like? And more importantly, how do you even begin to fix it? That's definitely something to chew on.